Nigeria has the second largest number of people living with HIV, with about 3 million people estimated to be living with the infection. In 2016, Nigeria had 220,000 new HIV infections and 160,000 AIDS-related deaths. On this week's edition of the program, we take a look at the HIV/AIDS epidemic in Nigeria. Hello there, welcome to Dateline Abuja. I'm Gloria Umezuke. According to the National Agency for the Control of AIDS, Nigeria's HIV/AIDS prevalence rate as at 2014 stands at 3.17%. As Nigeria joins the rest of the world to mark the World AIDS Day, we'll be looking at the fight to end HIV and AIDS in Nigeria in this week's episode of the program. But first, what are the stories that made the headlines within the week in the nation's capital? President Muhammadu Buhari is demanding that state governors pay salaries of workers in time for the Yuletide season. This is one of the fallouts of the president's meeting with members of the Nigerian Governors Forum at the State House in Abuja. The president also ordered that the balance of 50% of the Paris Club refund be paid to the state governors.
The discussion centered on basically the end of year, and the president himself had expressed the need to make sure that every Nigerian, especially the workers, have a beautiful Christmas. And the issues of the outstanding Paris Club was discussed, and that was taken care of to make sure that the workers workers in the various states and everywhere in the country gets to celebrate the Christmas.
The Paris Club refund numbers need to be reconciled. Okay, while the reconciliation process was going on, the president approved that 50% of the amount, provisional amounts, be paid to the states, and the payment started from last year. Okay, we still have balance 50%. Of the first 50% unpaid. This is what the president said must be paid in time for the state governments to meet their obligations before Christmas.
Corruption in Nigeria has defied efforts at eradicating it and is making the country a laughing stock. The acting chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Mr. Ibrahim Magu, said this in Abuja at the 68th General Assembly of the Broadcasting Organizations of Nigeria.
Corruption in Nigeria is cancerous and has defiled every effort at eradicating it, while making the country a laughing stock in the Committee of Nations. Well, some of us are content blaming successive regimes for lacking the will to tackle corruption. I believe that we also share in the blame. As citizens and professionals, we have roles to play. The question is, how effectively have we played our roles of helping to fight corruption in Nigeria?
The Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, has appealed to the media to stop mocking the federal government and support the war against corruption. Alhaji Mohammed made the appeal in Abuja at the 68th General Assembly, where he was the special guest of honor.
It must not be seen as the federal government's fight. It is our fight. If we fail to win by defeating corruption, it will simply overwhelm us as a nation. This appeal to the media to join us in the fight against corruption is born out of the fact that the fourth estate of the realm cannot afford to sit down on the fence as far as this fight is concerned. We are not saying that the media should not criticize us, over our strategy for the fight, but they should stop mocking us.
Meanwhile, the chairman of the Broadcasting Organization of Nigeria, Mr. John Momoh, has said that the organization is yet to have a clear roadmap for the implementation of the digital switchover in Nigeria. He made this known at the 68th General Assembly of the organization, while stating the need for its immediate implementation.
The worrying thing, however, is that as we try to come to terms with the disruptive innovations staring us in the face, we are being made to contend with numerous problems that are inflicted upon us, like disparity in license fees between the public and the private broadcasters. Did I say public broadcasters? No. Today, there don't seem to be public broadcasters anymore in this country because we all compete in the same commercial landscape for advertising. And that is anomalous. Government should fund the public broadcasters. We are compelled to pay a 1.5% levy on gross income even when we make a loss. And most of us do. We are yet to have a roadmap to the implementation of the digital switchover in Nigeria, and we are all in a quandary.
The federal government took another step in its fight against terrorism as President Muhammadu Buhari launched a new policy framework and national action plan for the prevention and combating of terrorism in Nigeria. President Buhari directed ministries, departments and agencies of government to ensure the implementation of the framework.
This policy framework and national action plan is a complementary approach developed through consultations with Nigerians in and outside the government. We are committed also to implement the framework through the whole of society approach involving all Nigerians.
The National Assembly has commenced debates on the 2018 budget estimates. President Muhammadu Buhari had on November 7 presented estimates of the 2018 budget before a joint session of the National Assembly and impressed on the legislators to ensure early passage of the bill to allow for implementation in the coming fiscal year.
Mr. President, to call a document that the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria presented to the National Assembly of the Federal Republic of Nigeria fictitious, I think is improper and is unparliamentary.
The federal government is set to dole out over 400 million naira as compensation to whistleblowers for the month of November, including the Ikoyi whistleblower. The Minister of Finance made the announcement at the end of the weekly Federal Executive Council meeting in Abuja.
The payment is due to be made, it's ready, it's been approved. The total batch, which includes Ikoyi, is 421,313,585 naira and 87 kobo. That's the total batch for the month. And that money is ready for payment. The only condition we now need to fulfill, and I'm sure by the time I get back to the office it would have been fulfilled, the money has to be paid to the personal account of the person who gave us the information. We won't pay a lawyer or a company. We have to pay the person who signed the agreement.
The federal government is warning that it will not tolerate violation of traffic laws by convoy drivers, military personnel and law enforcement agents during and after the Yuletide. The Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, gave the warning at a capacity-building workshop organized by the United Nations Economic Commission in Abuja for officials of the Federal Road Safety Commission.
Government drivers, especially those that drive us around, convoy drivers, must not disrupt flow of traffic or act in contradistinction to traffic officers' directives. Let me also admonish the military and all law enforcement agencies to cooperate with the Federal Road Safety Corps throughout the end of the year operations and beyond. The safety and security of this great nation rests on your collective shoulders. Hence, the failure of one will be seen as the failure of all.